welcome.
We are here. It's been a hot minute since both of us have chatted, so I'm just glad that you're able to do this interview with me.
I'm excited. Thank you for having me.
Anytime. Like as I mentioned on my social media, this is kind of a project / series that I'm doing just to get varying perspectives on people's spiritual journeys and how much their spirituality has impacted them up to the point of life that they're in. So the first question I usually ask my guests or those who have taken part in this project so far is, what were some of your spiritual and or religious experiences growing up in your childhood?
Okay, great question. So I would just like to preface the conversation and say that I am an Afro-Indigenous woman. So both of my parents grew up in the Baptist denomination of Christianity, but I practice a syncretic version. So meaning I incorporate aspects of Native American traditional religion. So I have some tobacco here, and I have white sage that was gifted to me by an elder of the tribe. And I also have some sweetgrass here. So growing up, like we went to church every Sunday, but also like I was reminded, God is the creator, or the Great Spirit, as Native American tribes refer to God essentially. And anytime I found a feather or something in nature, I was just reminded of the mercy and goodness of the creator, and kind of like thinking like, wow, I'm this small little being. And then also my mom placed emphasis, because she's my Indigenous parent, on ancestral veneration. And we also, the three of us, both my parents and I, are super into astrology. So it was very spiritual growing up. And we didn't really fit in the box of a traditional Christian, but we kind of just label ourselves as spiritual and just do what feels right to us, while also like honoring other beings on the earth. And yeah.
I think it's very unique that you have these various spiritual and religious experiences, because to be honest, in the grand scheme of things, it's something that's not often heard of, especially, given the state that we live in, predominantly Southern Baptist.
Yeah.
And I think another thing, I thank you for prefacing your Afro-Indigenous heritage, because that's something I really wanted to dig deep with you about in particular, especially with, dealing with the representation of Afro-Indigenous folks on top with, your work that you're doing, in college and in your community to help, just bring more attention to the needs of the Afro-Indigenous community and the Indigenous community in general.
I'm wearing my beaded earrings today, so period. Yeah. But yeah, I try to be super intentional about that, because the settler state never intended for both groups to survive. So here I am, like, surviving genocide, Indian removal, and slavery, chattel slavery. So like that's why my energy is so big, my spirit is so big, right? Because my ancestors got me to this point, like, and I'm into history, I'm a history major, like between tracing my tree, knowing my story, knowing where I come from, I refuse to let anybody play with me, period, because I just didn't evolve from such great people to be treated as average or to be erased. Like, in my opinion, and my dedication, erasure of Indigenous people and of Black and brown folks in general, it stops with me, because I have dedicated my life, my resources, just community care to people who really need it, because we're not minorities, we have been minoritized, and language is really crucial when approaching matters like this. So which kind of ties me, when you're going back talking about like Indigenous representation, I would just like to touch on this.
Sure.
you know, there's a new age of everyone's getting into crystals and spirit guides, and that
Mm-hmm.
stuff isn't something to be played with. If you are
Exactly.
Native
Absolutely.
American, you do not have a spirit guide. You don't have a spirit animal. You just don't, okay? Because Native Americans, we have different clans, and your clans go back to the animals that your ancestors saw when going back to the first person of the tribe. So, like for me, I come from the deer clan, so that's my guide. However, I have a close connection with birds. Like I'm always finding feathers. It can be in the weirdest place, under my bed, under the hood of my mom's car, anywhere. So I think that's something that people really need to research. If you're not Native American or indigenous, you don't have a spirit animal. I'm sorry to break it to you. And then sage, sage, white sage is super, super, super sacred. Um, Ceremonial uses. And what people don't understand is energy comes from beings and objects too. So if you burn, because white sage has to be harvested a sacred way. If someone that you don't know or is not indigenous did not harvest white sage, you're burning the energy of that person, and it's not doing anything. It just cancels out everything. I recommend that non-indigenous folks use blue sage or any other type of sage that is not white sage, because it is endangered, and our ancestors were demonized by Europeans for using sage, and we weren't allowed to practice our traditional religions legally until 1978. So people had to die to use them, and then to just see like non-indigenous people using it for clout, and on
Yeah.
Instagram. It's like when you go into ceremony and you meditate, you're going into ceremony with you. You're going in to have a talk with God or whoever being it
Exactly.
is. It
And
doesn't need to be recorded. It doesn't. Yeah.
that's something that for me, that's something that really hits home for me, because when I started using Instagram, I started using like seeing like those trends where it's just like, whether you know like about the deep history about like indigenous, sacred practices or not,
Hmm.
I just feel uncomfortable when I see folks, videotaping their ceremonies, or,
Hmm.
just like showing like their altars, that sort of thing. Like I have an altar, but I'm not gonna put it out there for, you know, tons of people to see, because that's something that's very
Hmm.
sacred to me. The
Hmm.
sacredness of spirituality, I feel,
Yes.
is kind of, I don't want to say dwindling, because I know a lot of people who are spiritual, they just don't put it out there. But
Right.
it does become a bit problematic when you're putting it out there, because it's like, what are you trying to prove, or what are you trying to show people? You know?
Right. And even so, like, you know me, I'm transparent, I'm gonna be blunt. It really bothers me when white people um use rocks and crystals, or try to like whitewash spirituality, like how they did with astrology, because astrology, I want to say, it derives from ancient Egypt or somewhere out in the Middle East, and it just really bothers me, because it's like you don't know about those crystals or voodoo, but yet they vote for some of them vote for apologies, sorry, I cannot speak today, vote for policies that harm Black and Brown people, yet you want to appropriate our culture and gatekeep spirituality, which bothers me. It is not
Mhm.
something that is meant to be gate kept. And I'm not saying that spirituality is just for Black and Brown folks. I'm saying get in where you fit in. If your ancestors did not do these certain practices to sustain and live and, you know, cling on to longevity, don't just do it for clout. Oh, look at my crystals. And then tell people they're going to hell for being gay the next day. It's like, what? So.
Exactly. It's very vague. Like this whole like spiritual trend I'm seeing on social media, especially Instagram. Instagram is
Yeah.
kind of like the ringleader of it all. It's very vague. They want to put forth their effort to like attract these kinds of spirits, but then the next day they're singing a whole different tune. Like there has to
Mm.
be some kind of consistency. And for me, I'm a firm believer. that spirits are very powerful and they are very real. With that being said,
Yeah.
you have to be careful the kind of spirits you get in contact with. And the one thing I've noticed personally is that people, they try to get in contact with spirits just as like they can get like an easy way out of like a situation that they're going through, or to try to obtain some kind of opportunity or whatever the case may be. They use spirits as a way of taking a shortcut, which is, I don't think that's the best way to describe it, but I think that's the best words that I can come up with right now.
Like,
And it's
like a
just like,
stepping stool, kind
yeah,
of.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just like, you really got to be careful, because sometimes you can get in contact with a spirit and, you know, you could be indebted to that spirit.
I'm gonna turn my camera off because I need to go get my feathers I want to show you. I'll be right back.
Sure.
All right, I'm back. I had to do some running. Didn't want y'all to see me running, honey. All right. All right, I'm back. So, these are just some of the feathers that I have found just walking. And I have a collection. I give each of them a name. And I'm a big believer. I'm a Cancer, so I'm a water sign. I'm very intuitive, and I just believe, and also Native American spirituality, that the birds, like eagles, hawks, fly the highest to the creator. So I feel like something is looking out for me. Anytime I need a sign, or just like I'm going through something, I am reminded like this too shall pass, because I can soar. And then Dr. Velasquez, my Cherokee mentor, she gifted me with these two feathers for graduation. This one is a red hawk feather. And then I have another one, and then she is going to gift me with an actual eagle feather. So I'm very excited and looking forward to that. But and people don't understand that spirits, you can get like the spiritual warfare, like I like to call it. I'm just at a loss for words. I don't know how to describe it. Is real. Like, we need to be intentional about what we listen to, what we eat, what we consume. Everything has a spirit, down to the chicken we eat at dinner. And I think it's just important to tap into our intuition and to just listen, because a lot of times we do the work, we manifest things, and we don't listen. And we need to listen, open that third eye, open your chakra, open your spiritual ear, because I feel like that's oftentimes why people repeat or are prone to repeating, going through the same situations, is because they're not listening and they're not walking into that destiny of their higher selves. So they're kind of just stuck and not leveling up, as Beyonce says. So I think just listening too, and just really being intentional. If I get a bad vibe from someone, that means my spirit is seeing something before my eyes can see it, and I don't want you around me. So I'm a big protector of my energy, and will block somebody in a minute, honey.
For real, I'm the exact same way. And like going to the dieting part, and like the way you eat and what food you eat, it's also like preparing your food too. Something I learned from a friend recently. She told me that depending on the energies and emotions of the person, or even yourself who like prepare the food, that can like affect like your energy once you like taste that food. So for instance, if the person that's cooking my food, they're like in good spirits, their vibration is high, and they're like happy and they're like doing well, then that energy reflects in the cooking, and then once you eat the food, it kind of transfers over to you. But on the flip side, if that person's feeling like shit, and maybe like working in a restaurant and they're already like pressed for time, they're rushing, and they have to get all these orders orders in and orders done, that can reflect the energy in the food and the energy that you take in too once you eat it. So
And down to the waiter taking it to the table too, just
yeah.
like that's why I always pray over my food. I used to
Mhm.
be embarrassed in kindergarten because a lot of my friends were white and they're like, why are you saying your grace and da 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 and why do you like soul food? And now I understand they call it soul food because like the old black folks say, girl, you put your foot in that, you put love in it, you make it with love, it's an ingredient. And so
Mhm.
I resonate with what you're saying about that, like everything, even down to the words we say, like not to be cliche or like quote the Bible or whatever, but like the power of life and death lies in the tongue. You can
Mhm.
speak power to those whatever obstacles, you can speak death to it. Um I'm just still hung up on the Instagram thing. It just really, and the Ouija boards, like
Yeah,
summoning
those two.
spirits. I'm a believer of, okay, if somebody in my family passes, they are my ancestor. And I will do everything I can in my spiritual power to venerate them, to remember things, to do things that I know they will want me to do. That's what I'm going to do. However, what I'm not going to do is to go get an Ouija board. I just, and there are mediums, like I have a spirit. If I'm trying to talk to another spirit, there's got to be an intermediate spirit. We don't know who that intermediate spirit is and where they come from, what they want. And like you said, you can become indebted to those spirits. And I want to touch on this, especially with sex. Like, again, you got to be careful what you put in your body and what is attached to your partner,
Mhm.
which can make it harder to leave or settle. You just gotta, like, everything I feel like is spiritual and just kind of is a big circle and just intertwines and is what's the word, inextricably linked. So yeah.
Yeah. And I'm a firm believer that energy is everything. Everything is energy. So it's like that scientific saying, energy can never be created or destroyed. Is there.
Right.
And it's infinite. So especially with humans, and it's funny that you mentioned sex because I read something about like sex and energy the other day, and it mentioned that once you have sex with that person, you know physical effects of it
Mm-hmm.
may like go away, but the energy stays. And depending on what kind of energy that person has, that can resonate and stick with you.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of energies that people can give off,
Mm-hmm.
especially like very low vibrational energy, like that can eat you up physically and mentally and spiritually too. And I think a lot of people miss that because
Yes.
you say like you're going through a health issue, you're like, well, what's wrong with me? But
Mm-hmm.
you go to the doctor, it's like, well, we don't see anything. And then right
Preach.
there, that right there lets you know, like this is something spiritual that's going in. Like it's about time for a spiritual cleansing, so to speak. So energy is a very big thing, and I think this year, like with the pandemic and with like the election and all like the tragic murders of our
Mm-hmm.
fellow brothers and sisters, the energy has been really heavy this year.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot more people, whether they understand spirituality, religion, or either follow either or, it doesn't matter. I think a lot more people are really opening up their eyes, maybe even their third eye, to just the impact that energy can have on a collective. So
That's what I would say, collective, because I feel like as Americans, we're so hung up on individuality, i.e., at the people that don't wear masks. Anyways, but yes, it's kind of like, I got to be sarcastic for a minute. Wow, we really staged the biggest human trafficking scale in global history, aka slavery, and it's almost as if, black blood I don't know, toiled the land, and we are built on ancient Indian burial grounds, and we wondering why we have all these problems. Like,
Exactly.
mm,
The ancestors don't play. And I'm telling you, it's gonna get to a point. I feel actually like the ancestors, they gonna have enough. And then when Mother
right.
Nature get in the mix, then it's gonna be a real problem. And I'm
Going
trying to
to
tell
all
y'all
these
now.
storms, Mother Nature is already like the falling of the sycamore tree. I mean, you can take that as a sign of Christianity. You can take that as climate change. I take it as both. Like
Mm-hmm.
all these moon, I love the moon, love her. Um, she's just so big now, so huge. All the
Yeah,
solar
she's gotten
eclipses,
so big.
Mercury in retrograde, just going backwards, back to back to back. In 2021, we're gonna have the age of Aquarius. I mean, just like the storms. That one, I don't know where it came. It was like a big dust storm that came from Senegal all the way over to the United States. If that is not,
Yeah,
that's crazy, but
that
it's
is some
real.
ancestral energy, Mother Nature right there. Like
Africa, yes,
that
yes.
alone lets me know, okay, this is a
Mm-hmm.
big shift and it's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like the earth in general,
Mm-hmm.
it's been like a big change. I mean, I know personally for me, I feel it. Like you go outside and it's just like
Yes.
the air, the aura of nature around you is different. And I've been
Mm-hmm.
keeping big tabs on the moon. I think more now this year than ever
Mm-hmm.
because I think women are more affected by the moon than men,
Sure. Mm-hmm.
especially, with our feminine energy. And then add on top of that, like the menstrual cycle. Like I now track my period through what phase of the moon, it happens on. Sometimes it'll happen during like a last quarter moon, or
Uh-huh.
sometimes it'll come on during the full moon itself. Like I feel like women and like the moon, we just have that connection. And the moon gives off very feminine energy.
I love the moon because my moon is in Cancer and my sun is in Cancer, and like the ruling, being is the moon. And I love the moon because she reminds me of myself, like the duality and coexistence of darkness and light.
Mhm.
And so like there's a side that's a little mysterious, but when she shines on you, you're gonna know, you're gonna feel that warmth and that motherly energy. And similar with tracking my period, I don't necessarily do it like astronomically. I do mine astrologically. So I go by like what phase the moon is in. And
Mhm.
my period, which I'm on it now, it came on the first day of the Cancer moon. So, and I'm a Cancer moon and a Cancer sun, and it
Ah,
typically comes on when the moon is in Cancer, Virgo, or Scorpio, typically, because the moon stays in a sign for approximately 2 to 3 days. And I think there are exceptions when planet is in retrograde, but yeah. So because it can be tricky just like looking at a calendar, because that does not take into account like that's, I feel like, the Western view, like, oh, the Gregorian calendar,
yeah,
like, because if you stress, like you said, those levels, what are you feeling, what are you going through, that's not gonna, that's not, it's not granted fluidity. Whereas how we're doing it, there's a little bit of fluidity and it's gonna change, but we're still like, we know what's going on, we know when it's gonna come on, we just doing it a different way. But yeah.
yeah. And I've been wanting to ask you about like the natal chart
Hmm.
and basically how to read it. Like
Yeah.
for me personally, I'm just now getting into it. Like I looked at my natal chart recently
Hmm.
and been taking notes on it.
Hmm.
But astrology is very interesting. And I think a lot of people feel like it's belief system, but it's a study. It's a study of the
Yes.
planets and how it affects your
Hmm.
personality, your emotions, and your life experiences. So I
Hmm.
just wanted to know, like from your point of view, how does one analyze their natal chart and try to like get a better understanding of themselves as individuals?
Well, first, for the folks like that are watching that may not know what a birth chart is, it's important to know what time exactly you were born. I'm gonna, there's a couple of sites I'm gonna pull up. Let's see. I typically tend to use the app CoStar. However, CoStar does not really give you an in-depth reading, but I like Cafe. I'm gonna bring my closer. I don't know if y'all can see that. Cafe
Yeah.
Astrology. I love Cafe Astrology. So once you know what time you're born and the city of your birth, put that in and you'll see. Let me just actually pull up my chart and walk everybody through it, because it's a lot. Like you said, it is complex. I've been studying astrology since I was 10. Both of my parents are into astrology. Okay, so let's see if we can. So you see there's a chart. So when you first pull it up, you'll see like all the planets, your moon, blah, 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 all that stuff. So that's not going to give you the information that you need to analyze it. So when you scroll all the way down, let's see, it'll give you descriptors, Cafe Astrology. It'll say like Sun and Cancer, and it'll give you this long, in-depth reading and then a shortened version. And my best advice is to read it all the way through, and then get into astrology groups. Ask a friend that's like, you're asking me, to help you analyze it. But I would just start with the main three, getting to know your main three, which is your sun, your moon, and your rising. So when you say you're a Pisces, when I say I'm a Cancer, that refers to our sun sign. Which a lot of astrologers, when you're looking at a horoscope, they just do the generalization for your sun sign, whereas your birth chart or your natal chart is specific to you. And because of westernized influence, people are like, oh, it's a pseudoscience. It's not pseudoscience. It relates to the planets, and you got to read it. But then your moon sign is how you process your feelings. And then your rising or your ascendant is how you kind of like live your life and how you come off to other people. I recommend starting with those three, especially the moon and the rising, because your sun is your wants and your moon is your needs. So I think those two are the biggest to focus on. And then you can go through and read the planets, follow astrology accounts on Twitter or Instagram. A lot of folks in the comments will chat back and forth with you. I feel like I'm rambling, but
yeah,
just start with the three.
Yeah, I actually have some of my natal chart, well, all the planets. So my sun is in Pisces, my moon is in Capricorn. Mercury,
I see that.
Both Mercury and Venus are in Aries. Mars is in Scorpio. Jupiter is also in Aries. Saturn is in Taurus. Uranus and Neptune are in Aquarius. Pluto's in Sagittarius. And then my Lilith, Lilith in Scorpio, and my node is Leo. Yay!
Okay, so your Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, and Lilith are the same. That's a generational thing. So everybody born within 10 years have those same positions.
Okay.
Yes, my Mars is also in Scorpio. And so Pisces, water sign, y'all are a little moody, very dreamy, sensitive, creative, super sweet. And then your Capricorn moon. Capricorn is the sister sign of Cancer. So Capricorns are often called the father of the zodiac. That's that masculine energy. So you're chill and you're mellow. So you kind of are like a balance of emotion and logic all in the same breath. So yeah. And then Mars in Scorpio, that's the planet of sex, like taboo and creativity. And that's the strongest position that Mars can be in, because Mars is the ruling planet of Scorpio. So yes, you can be a little petty sometimes. That's probably where that Scorpio coming in. Or feeling the need to get revenge, like I'm gonna fix them, or that's probably that hot temper, but you mellow yourself out a little bit because you have the earth grounding you, that Capricorn placement.
And that I'm
Yep.
very glad.
Yes, honey. I wish I'm 38% water, followed by earth, and then I have two air positions, but I'm an Aquarius rising. So like I have RBF, and I'm an intellectual, creative, a weirdo, all that, period. But like you said, it's not a belief system. I don't believe in astrology. Well, congrats, because it's not a belief system. Um, I personally like astrology, I guess because I grew up with it, but also because it helps me better know the needs and how to love someone I'm close with. Like all of my good friends, I know their birth charts, I know their love language, I know what medium, they like to exercise with communication, boundaries. I really feel like it helps you be a better person. To get to know somebody on such a deep level and to take that time to get to know them. But yeah, I'm glad that there's been this shift in the field from, oh, my horoscope, because a horoscope is kind of like the news, when they tell us, oh, Raleigh, North Carolina, it's going to rain today. They're not going to do it for every zip code. They're not going to say, okay, 27606 607 610 603. They're not going to do that. And same with an astrologer. An astrologer in a horoscope, they're not going to sit down and be like, okay, Pisces sun, Capricorn moon, okay, Pisces Cancer. They're not going to do that. And that's why people may be like, I don't resonate with this. I'm not a typical Pisces. Yeah, hello, you got to know what time you were born. But I will say, if you don't know exactly what time you were born, you won't know your rising. There is a feature for you to put don't know on Cafe Astrology. That'll give you all of the positions except for your rising. But yeah.
And just going off of that, the balance of masculine and feminine energies, I feel like that's something that's really important. But I think the biggest part of the discussion is that they tends to intertwine with the conversations around gender. So I want to know kind of your hot take on that discussion.
I'm gonna tie it back into Native religion. We have in the community two spirit people, and two spirit people have a special ceremonial role. Granted that they have masculine spirit or male spirit, female spirit, and then it's basically an intersection of spirit, gender roles, and ceremonial roles. And only two spirit people have that veneration or can kind of be like a special medicine person, if that makes sense. I think that for the sake of balance, yes, we should, like, I feel like if I had to break it down, I feel like I am maybe 65% feminine energy, and then like I'm not a math person, I don't want to say no number and be embarrassed. Then the rest is masculine energy. And I am a very like I'm kind of, I would describe myself as an ambivert. So I'm introverted, but I'm also extroverted with people that I like. So I have that motherly spirit to want to like take care of people and do, but I have a hard time of accepting that energy back. Like I can't be the one asking for help because I feel like as a woman, a Black woman especially, I have to be strong, I have to do this, I have to be led, and I don't really exercise my submissiveness because I'm used to being a go-getter, this and that. And I think that people should, like, whichever one, like if you're more of one energy, tap into the other side to get that balance, and that might fix some of the emotional imbalances that people have. I'm all for it. I really just don't understand why everything has to have a gender. I just don't understand it. Like in terms of tying it to gender roles, I just don't get it. And I think that comes back to men that are scared of their femininity. Like when I hear men say, oh, I would never wear pink, pink is gay. Like, what? Like what?
Well, like that,
I just
understand. I don't understand that at all. And I think for me personally, see, for my masculine versus feminine side, I'm 60% masculine, 40% feminine. That that's me.
Okay.
Yeah, I've always had more of a masculine side than feminine. But I think
Mhm.
more these days, I'm really beginning to understand my feminine side because, to be honest, growing up, I had kind of like those convictions against femininity. I think that attributes to my tomboyish ways. And but now I'm beginning to like embrace it and have like a different understanding of it. And I think a lot
Mhm.
of the stereotypes for both genders has to do with, like the media and like, society's views on gender and how we're supposed to act, which obviously that's far from the
Yeah.
truth. It's just like the men wearing pink or saying like women with short hair, I have short hair. I've
Mhm.
never had long hair a day in my life, but women with short hair, they're not as sexually appealing or they're not as feminine because their hair is short. But I have a short afro. So add on to that, my
And
hair is natural.
good, period.
Thank you.
Okay. But I think that, like you said, what we're hitting at is we have been socialized to believe we must do these things to be a woman. We must do these things to be a man. So it's
Exactly.
socialization and it's colonization because a lot of indigenous and African societies were matriarchal or matrifocal.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't start having, and I would just like to talk about the amount of just transphobia and homophobia in the Black community sickens me. There is not enough
Absolutely.
intersectionality. I just like, and it goes back to, okay, colonization. A majority of us, I feel like, are Christian, especially like if a person is a Christian Black person. I've had conversations with older folks. They're like, I don't understand. God made us this way. Da 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 da. Like in that time that you're using your religion and inflicting harm and trying to convert someone from not being this or not being a way that society has prescribed them to be, we could be donating that time to curing homelessness,
Mm-hmm.
poverty, something that is actually a plaguing issue, you know?
Yeah.
And so I just, it is crazy. Or what a woman should cook. No, no. What works for one couple may not work for another, but personally speaking, everybody need to know how to cook. It
Every
is a skill. It is not a role. Yeah. So
and
we
it's
are
great that you
definitely
mentioned that.
rare in our mindset.
Yeah. It's great that you mentioned that. And it kind of bothers me when people default to the Bible. I'm studying the Bible heavily now, and I'm kind of looking at it from a different lens, like for me individually, than like from what my family has taught me growing up. And it really opened my
Yeah.
eyes to a lot of things. And not saying that I'm like fully strictly Christian anymore, because that's not the case for me. I'm kind of like on my own spiritual path, but I still read you know, religious texts just to like get an understanding of like the
Yeah.
conduct in which they want people are expected to live, just like to get a better understanding of what was on the people's minds when they wrote the text. But anyway, it's like going back to the homosexuality thing. When people like use the Bible to kind of defer or turn away like the conversation on homosexuality, it's like until you can really pinpoint
Mhm.
certain texts or certain parts of the Bible that really go into depth that about this, it's just like it's kind of hard to like really use the Bible as like your sole argument against homosexuality. I feel like me personally, it's kind of like there is some kind of biological thing that, well, somewhat, but I know for one thing, it's kind of hard for African Americans to come out. And I've grown up with a particular friend of mine who's bisexual. He's more open about it now, but when he was younger, he had a very hard time dealing with it. And he got called all kinds of names from, you know, like he was like a fag, or he was too girly, he was a punk because he was bi. It was all of these.
If you're talking, okay, I can hear you now. Okay.
But
yeah, like
it's disgusting. But another thing that really upsets me is that not more so of the insults, but the fact that people just don't talk about it in our community as much. Granted, there are more conversations about it, but I just feel like there should be a little more discourse in talking about it.
Like my mom and my dad, like I feel like in just talking about sex, choice in sexual partners, sexuality, orientation, mental health, boundaries. All of those things are so taboo. Like you said, like I've lost a friend to suicide because she was so afraid to come out to her parents. Like she was constantly stuck. Do I live my life in the course that I have set for myself? Or do I conform and just shrink and shrivel up to make my parents happy? Mm-hmm. And so it just really, I'm getting emotional right now. Like it bothers me because why can't, this is a dumb question, like a rhetorical question. Like why we can't just be nice and mind our business?
Yeah.
And it makes me like, I date outside the race because, well, that we the human race, honey. If you look good, I like you. Okay. And I just,
oh my God.
If you look good, baby, I don't care if you red, purple, blue like Doug, you can be bald like Caillou, baby. If I like you, I like you, you know? And I just like, in terms of race, because unfortunately, I like men. Unfortunately. I just, it bothers me. People say, oh, interracial marriage, that's different. It's like, y'all realize we had to have a court case like we did for same-sex marriage, for interracial. Y'all don't read? Okay. But tying it back to the Bible, what I'm about to say is highly controversial, so let's go ahead and get into it. Okay. I just gotta break this down. Okay. So in terms of the Bible, if you read the King James Version, King James was a homosexual. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the Bible is subjective because people are writing it. Okay, you going from Hebrew, which is an Aramaic, or excuse me, Jesus spoke Aramaic, but the Bible was written in Hebrew, which is the Semitic language. That translation to English probably got lost. Like, I'm not going to lie. The crucifixion was written 200 years after it happened. And I feel like a lot of scriptural and religious texts have cultural norms embedded in the scripture, and that it's not actually what the said deity said. Because I've taken Women in Global Perspective, and just like even reading like Islamic text, like how a lot of what's in the Quran is not really, it's just like culture, kind of like the hijab. And like talking to a lot of my friends, they're like, yeah, same with the book. Like they're like, okay, the Torah, the Bible, and the Quran, it's just a lot of people projecting their societal beliefs and then disguising it. Well, God said blah, 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 to make people feel compelled to act a certain way and control. Also, there's a second group. So you have like the Israelites, the Black Israelites, right? Mm-hmm. That argue, oh, Black people were the first people in America and we're the lost tribe of Israel. You know, the Bible was written by a white man. And it's like, Jesus wasn't white. Okay, like,
He
And that
wasn't.
narrative of saying that Black people were here first um, invalidates and distance. So it's a slap in the face to our ancestors. Like, what? Come on
Mhm.
now. You can be pro-Black without being an Aboriginal, whatever they like to call themselves. That's ridiculous. Anyway, but that was a little controversial piece. So I take everything that I read from the Bible with a grain of salt.
Mhm.
We are not living in the Roman Empire. We are not in the Middle East. We have got to, books and documents have to be able to evolve with society. We can't be in that fixated view. And same for like how people use the Bible to justify abortion. If you are on birth control, you are pro-choice. If you have ever taken a plan B, you are pro-choice. Do not bully people who decide to get an abortion and then be like, well, God said. And then it comes back down to human anatomy and like, oh,
Yeah.
the argument women should just have sex to have babies. Why do women have to bear the brunt of that when we're not the ones that get us pregnant? It's the men. Anyway, I digress, but that's just, yeah.
I think you hit a lot of good points. And going back to the Bible, I feel like once you, like you said, there's a lot of text that I feel is kind of missing. But not necessarily missing, and just not available for the public view. So,
Yes.
and I feel,
I
I also feel that about the whole argument, like using the Bible once again, like I said earlier, using the Bible as just kind of like your like a defense mechanism in order to like justify, what you're against. And I think after a while, it's gonna take much more than just using the Bible in order to defer your points. And I'm a firm believer that if you get like defensive or if your points are easily challenged, you might want to rethink them anyways. That's kind of
Mhm.
like my
Right.
opinion.
And even in the community, like people like our community, they view, if you like science, if you look to science more, that you're not religious, or that the two cannot be linked. And it's like, yes, they can. Like, I'm pro-choice. I possess some Christian beliefs. And people are like, how are you you should be pro-life. And I just feel like if something, organized religion should not be associated with one thing. And I'm like, honestly, if you want to get into a political party, um, I don't identify as a Democrat or as a Republican. I identify, I guess, like as a socialist, but that's again taboo in today's society. Even though I am a registered Democrat, I feel like there's issues with both parties. But the Republican Party, their face is like white, rich, Catholic, right? Okay.
Mhm.
Jesus was not rich and white. If anything, I would argue that he was the first victim of police brutality because he was killed at the hands of Pontius Pilate under the Roman Empire.
Mhm.
So it just bothers me when people think, oh, when you think Christianity, you must be this, 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 and this. That's not godliness. If the point of contention points back to people, I mean, that's our proof right there. Like, and you can do something. That's again why I love spirituality. Religion, as my grandma will say, religion will send you to hell, but spirituality will evaluate you if you or elevate you. If you do something religiously every day, that doesn't mean it's good. If you religiously bully people, if you religiously um, are a bad person, or you religiously are using your religion to deter people, that's not good. Just because you're doing it religiously, that doesn't mean anything. That just means that you're consistent in your harmful approach. But because the biggest devils be sitting in the church sometimes, like it just
Yeah,
bothers me.
absolutely.
Like there's a difference between church folk and Christian. There's yeah, major difference. Yeah,
And I
it's
think that's something else I noticed too is that there's kind of like a narcissism that comes with, like the religious experience sometimes. It's like some people use like their religion in order to like be on a pedestal, like put themselves on a pedestal, have like some like superiority complex about them. And I was like, that's not godliness at all. Because what you're saying is that just because you affiliate with this religion, that means that you're somehow in a better position or you're somewhat elevated, which that's not the case.
And again, I say a lot of things that most people don't say. So I took Holocaust experiences at Meredith, and it really opened my eyes when talking about the Bible and the definition of what is a Christian, right? And technically, Christianity is a man-made religion because Paul established the church, not Jesus. Jesus came to reform Judaism, not Christianity. So, food for thought.
It's a lot to think about. And going back what you said earlier about the shift in energy and then we're moving towards the age of Aquarius, I feel like a lot of these social structures and even like religious structures, I feel like a lot of them are going to be confronted. I mean, some of them already are, but I think it's going to be more heavily prevalent with this new shift that's coming in.
A lot of folks, and I'm telling you, just even looking, I called the election before it even happened, right? Because I'm looking at astrology and looking at the planets and how the election fits into the grand scheme of things. Aquarius is known for being intellectual, unconventional, humanitarian. And we have seen a lot of abuses and crimes against humanity, which ties back to your point. A lot of folks, the government, I'm getting in my spirit, I keep hearing the government is about to get called out. Okay. And people think, oh, Joe and Kamala, they're the saving graces. No, they are neo-imperialist. They're better than Trump, but it's not going to go away. If anything, I'm hearing and I'm feeling like things like race relations are going to get worse. And the systemic racism, and everything that upholds patriarchy, misogyny, misogynoir is going to get called out. It's going to be a lot of things unfolding that have been kept from the people. I keep hearing the people. I think that is going to be called out, as well as intentions. People may be losing their jobs. Relationships are going to be ruined. It's about to be a new age of rebirth and calling things out and making people aware of wrongdoings. It's going to be it's a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah. So kind of for like my final question, what I usually ask folks is just to send a message of encouragement or advice to folks who are, maybe on a spiritual path, and maybe they're kind of uncertain of what's next for them, or even those who are kind of in like that period of discovery in which they know they want to embark on a spiritual path or even religion, but they're not sure where to start. So what would be a message of encouragement you would send to folks, especially given the times that we're in?
Yes. I would just say remain true to who you are. Don't feel pressure to conform. And if you feel something, because spirituality is emotional, if you feel something, stand on that. Like, don't diverge from it because society says it's weird. Be true to you. Tap into your highest self. I highly suggest meditation and journaling. And if you are constantly like, especially like for my empaths, I need you to rest and recharge. Like, it's okay to rest on your spiritual journey, and to not, I think it's important not to have a certain, what am I trying to say? Don't be fixed in your path. Let the spirit or your ancestors, whoever it is, whichever way you turn, let them guide you, and just be willing to be used like as a vessel, because like that's all spirituality is. It's just a vessel of spirits. And my contact info, if you want to talk more, if you watch this and you like what I said, I can be found on Instagram, Cancerian, CANCERIAN, babe, BXBE_47. I would love to help those that are, it's hard for me to provide a blanket statement because everybody's situation is different. But yeah, just reach out if you want to connect, and I'll be happy to lend my expertise. And thanks again for having me. I had a good time.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks again for joining me on this project, this series. I'm excited to see how it evolves over time, especially during a time period where a lot of big energy shifts are happening and a lot of folks are just coming out and standing and speaking in their truths. I think that this series is kind of a way to give a platform and a space to folks who want to be able to just get their truths out and their beliefs. So I'm really happy that you were able to come on.
Thank you. And again, I'm proud of you. The ancestors are proud of you, and you're being a good ancestor, and your descendants will be proud of you. So
Thank you. I think we can sign off on that note. Thanks again, Ashley.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.